What's up? It's Alex here with another episode of the List My Products e-commerce podcast. Today I'm joined by Ross Stockdale from Perpetual Equity. Ross, how you doing today?
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me on, man.
Rock solid. So Ross was telling me how he got started in the, eventually found himself in private equity, first starting in the marketing industry, right? When you were in school, you were telling me you would pre-build the websites for companies and show them, hey, this is what it looks like, right? 'Cause sometimes you try and sell someone a product without testimonials. I've been there, right? Trying to
hmm
start this company, and it's hard for someone to kind of envision it. And then today I've seen that with people like Chase Renier and his SEO audits he pushes. But you mind describing, the struggle in the beginning, when you're just getting this off the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the beginning, I graduated college in 2013, and my major was English literature and philosophy. So, I was a humanities graduate, and no one was really bursting my door down to hire someone in 2013 with that degree. So, I had to show value first and foremost. In order to do that, I would create a product, show the result of my work doing SEO, and then basically sell the result that was tangible, because a lot of digital marketing, sure, you can do activity and that's great. But at that time in 2013, ranking for keywords was king. So I approached, luckily, there were many business owners in the area that were not tech savvy. I identified that if you were in the Amish construction business, if you were in the real estate business, if you were an operator that was 50 years old and older in 2013, it's likely that you either didn't have a website or your website wasn't performing very well. So I wanted to show the solution off the bat to make the sales process easier.
Absolutely. And so that's a lot of grit, right? I know a lot of the people you approach probably are thinking, we've done it so long like this. Why do we need this? Right. And what are some of the common objections that you ran into when you were, when you're doing this?
So that's a great question. I would say some of the most common objections were, you know, if you're so good at this, why don't you have your own? Like, what's your company? Where's your staff? Oh, you're just one kid. Yeah, likely story. So I didn't have the business card and the financing behind me and the staff in the office. So a
Yeah.
lot of those business owners, the traditional success signals weren't there, and they're just like, no way, I'm not getting scammed into giving you money. So um, what that led me to was the idea that I could take a full-time job doing that and building up my resume for someone else. Even though I did have a resume for myself, building it for somebody else, an established company, I felt like that was a smooth next step. So trying to side hustle my own business and put it on the back burner.
Right on. And so that experience, working for other people did build your resume. And, you have a unique journey, right? So as we spoke about off camera, you and your family's history in real estate, just listening to your story there, it was almost like you were laying the foundation, right? Working with construction companies, connecting with people in the real estate space. You know, how did you, leverage the digital marketing side to eventually enter in the real estate field, which became, your private equity firm you operate now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the shortest way I could describe that is I built a portfolio, and the office that I was working at was down the street from the office of one of my good friends from college.
Mhm.
So we had kind of lost touch. He had moved away from central Pennsylvania and came back and invited me to lunch at the sushi restaurant that we'd see each other at during our respective lunch breaks. So
Uh-huh.
he had said to me, "Hey,
How
I
is
wanted to
Central
start."
Pennsylvania sushi, by the way? Just curious.
I'm sure it could be way better elsewhere. So um anyway, the sushi is not what I brag home about. So with meeting with him, he goes, "Hey, would you want to build me a website for my," at the time it was a real estate syndication platform. He wanted to sort of build a fund and acquire as many multifamily unit apartment doors as possible. I said, "Hey, you're just starting this?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Instead of building a website and charging you for a one-off project, what about, have you ever thought about having a partner?" So at that point, 2 weeks later, sign operating agreement for Perpetual Equity Group with the intention of doing real estate. And then a week after that, I started school to get my license. So became licensed, and around February, middle of February, right around Valentine's Day before COVID hit, we had our first 216 units under agreement from our LOI, and we were in good shape. So COVID hit, and that really changed everything. So
A lot of the people I speak to, 'cause, some people audience know I'm background in real estate, those, rent moratoriums, there are a lot of problems there, especially when it comes to the NOI, the net operating income, turning over. And I want to touch on that, but I also want to take a step back, right? From the e-commerce podcast. You brought your skills from selling online in a different way to other companies into a non-traditional field, right? The real estate industry. What kind of strategic benefits were you able to show your partner? Because you leveraged your background, you always had the interest. And, what kind of benefits were you able to parlay, from your previous experience that otherwise he wouldn't have had access to if he didn't work with you?
So I guess as far as the benefits of leveraging my skills, I was used to talking to people for 60 to 70 hours a week, running a marketing agency, whether that was managing teams, whether that was doing sales, whether that was coming up with marketing strategies. And um, I'm a pure communicator. And what his day job is he's a backroom financial consultant. So really, I'm the front of house and he's the back of house. So what other benefits I had were, specifically in real estate, the average age of a realtor in our area is like 55 years old, typically a mother who is an empty nester, and this is her secondary career. So understanding that demographic of realtors and knowing that I can make a Google My Business profile rank within a day, and a lot of them don't have Facebook. So I understood that for first time home buyers, or specifically for me, for investors, I could just quickly um, create the profiles needed, add content in a certain way that would grab people's attention, where the majority of my competition would either not be or would be struggling to do so.
I love to hear that, because a lot of the people I know who we help are, a brick and mortar traditional stores. Once you get success, though, it can be difficult, as for some of the younger audience members, right? Because some of my audience is, traditional business owner. They're really not going to branch out. Some of my audience are former people like yourself here who are really crushing it in their first industry, right? You're someone who's kind of cross fields, right? So what I'm getting from you is, if you want to create a second, opportunity stream, find a way to leverage what you've already got, right? Those are really valuable skills. And so why don't you tell me a little bit about Perpetual Equity Group, and what types of multifamily you're going after nowadays?
Sure, absolutely. We started as a real estate syndication platform, and after COVID, about a month in, Pennsylvania, I'll rewind a bit. Pennsylvania was the only state that deemed real estate non-essential when COVID happened. So I had 10 leads for residential sales. I started the year really hot in 2020, and the deals that I had on the table were off the table. Being self-employed, my recurring projects were either finished around the time of COVID, and I was starting new ones with companies that either went out of business because they were construction, renovation, etc., or they cut their marketing budget because I was working with small businesses. So I had zero income going. And for me, I needed to find work pronto. I leveraged all my savings going all in as an e-commerce entrepreneur. So what I did was I went on to Indeed and just applied for jobs. And I found a company in New Holland, Pennsylvania, so east of Lancaster, that was in need of digital marketing help. During my interview, before we left, we had our first lead for private equity, just for a small business looking to sell. So I told them what we had raised for real estate. They told me that that was the number they wanted to sell their business for. Before I was hired, we were starting the acquisition process. So since then we've
Show to a
acquired,
job interview and you bought the company.
yeah. So
Right on.
the owner that hired me at the time, now I sit at his desk. So less than 2 years later. So actively the chief marketing officer there, and I am a co-owner, and I sort of act as head of company or president, but our business structure is a little bit non-traditional. So for all intents and purposes, I'm the president of the company.
Right on, Mr. Stockdale, right? Now, let me tell you, I've spoken to a few people on mergers and acquisitions before, right? Some are in e-commerce specifically, some people in banks.
Mhm.
What kind of companies would you say would be your specialty? If someone's in the audience who might be a customer of ours, who's deciding maybe this business is no longer for me, who would be your ideal client to reach out and say, hey, buy my business?
Sure, that's a great question. So where we're currently at, our strategy is based on sustainability, agriculture, lifestyle. We're very much so a traditional American way of life. So we're in the equestrian industry. We sell everything but the horse. Basically, if you're a cowboy, we probably have what you want. And if you're a what they call a traditional English rider, we probably have what you want. So our parent company specializes in insurance and financial sector. So we have insurance agencies. We talk to companies and carriers. We also are getting into the agricultural startup space. So we have several cannabis industry startups. We have acquired 3 other equestrian companies since last June. So we're aggressively growing there. But what I want to do is own the supply chain. If you're a manufacturer that's struggling, we're looking to help. If you're into growing products, if you're into growing, food or obtaining raw materials and manufacturing, we're here to help. If you are a fast moving startup that's looking for business management, for marketing, for everything else, but what you're good at doing, we're here to help. And if you're an established distribution, logistics, sort of a warehouse company that's looking to speed up your e-commerce, happy to help you there. We started a marketing company at the beginning of the year. So Perpetual Marketing Group, PMG, that is another space. We're breaking into the service industry. And within our company, Perpetual Equity Group, we own charter lane management services. So what that is an outsourced CFO service. We offer financial services like backroom. Basically, it's a lot cheaper to use us than it is to hire a CFO, and we'll do a great job.
Ross, that's a great segue. You also have a podcast, right? The PMG podcast, is that right?
Yeah, the PMG Pod. That is our channel. I finished our first 8 episodes today. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can download a podcast.
And Ross, those and all my audience, those episodes will be linked in the description below. So Ross, looking ahead, right, and as we kind of come to the end of this interview here, I hear a lot of opportunities brewing, right? But I also want to be, the world's changing a lot, and someone who's in a position and touch a lot of diversified businesses. What are some things to keep an eye on that you guys might be privy to from your position?
So we take a very interesting approach. So a lot of private equity companies look at the numbers and the bottom line and are looking to make a quick turnaround and make something profitable. So we almost feel like typical private equity is almost cutthroat or incredibly competitive and not as compassionate. Our core values are to preserve, enrich, and grow. We do that in industries that we find to be recession proof and enduring, and not so much in hot stock opportunities. So to answer the question of how we look at the market, we sort of measure the effects of what bad things are going around the world, and we try to help as many people to stave off and not necessarily be as negatively impacted by the disaster in the world. We know that Ukraine and Russia produce 15% of the world's fertilizer, 47% of the world's seed oils. So we're looking at how do we get more nutrient dense soil and agriculture in the United States. We know that China and Southeast Asia exports a ton of consumer goods. We're looking at how can we create manufacturing jobs in the United States to mitigate against the delays and the increased costs, to create more American jobs and more affordable, high quality products here. we want to help with the mental health and obesity epidemic in the United States. So we want to grow healthy foods and do natural medicines so that people can address their mental health needs. Um, we look at the problem, we're entrepreneurs. We look at the problem, we want to find the best solution that's long term and not a quick fix.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. Now, Ross, I want to thank you again for coming on today. That was really unique as an interview, not just from your starting point to your ending point, but the way you're going about items. I really have a deep appreciation for how you see the world.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Right on. Until next time.